Do you have like a little string or something on your hat, I think?
I do.
Is that a string?
It is a string. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Listography. Kramzer here with Joe. No Jason. Reason for that is, as you figured out by clicking on this video, this is Madonna week. So those of you newer to the channel, we are going to dive into the discography and rank our favorite albums of said artist, which is Madonna. As we just alluded to, Jason taking the week off from Madonna. We like to take time off from time to time. No surprise, Madonna and her 14 albums that we will be reviewing is the week that he chose. So Madonna, everyone knows her, a queen of pop from the 80s. I consider her objectively on like that Mount Rushmore of the 80s pop with her, Michael, Prince, Whitney. That's kind of my big four. You know, famous for not just having a great music pop career, but also, you know, having a big screen presence, acting in a lot of films, and kind of being just a pop culture icon from the 80s into the 90s, especially with her sexuality, being really provocative, always pushing the boundaries. Yeah, before we get into it, my big takeaway from this is it was almost just like a big history lesson or compass of where pop music is from era to era, because she always seems to have her finger on what like the newest kind of style and trends in mainstream pop are, for the most part. So Joe, what are your thoughts? How are your feelings on Madonna? You know, what's your relationship to her going into this?
My relationship basically began and ended with the Immaculate Collection, her greatest hits, her first greatest hits, one of I think 3 that she has. And you know, I love the 80s synth dance pop stuff. You know, Borderline, Like a Virgin, all of that stuff. You know, I know a little bit from music, Ray of Light. I don't know if I've ever listened to an entire album of anything from the 90s on of her. So, you know, I'm familiar with some of her stuff, but there's a lot of stuff I hadn't heard before. But, you know, I like Madonna. I like her. I like her as an actress. I like her as a singer. I think she's very interesting. Like you said, she always kind of has her finger on the trends, and she seems to not just have her finger on it, but sort of be the progenitor of a lot of these trends. You know, she's sort of the first on the scene, taking music, whether it's kind of introducing Americans to electronica and trap music in the 2000s, or sort of that upbeat dance pop of the 80s. She's a great artist, even if, you know, not everything's my style, but I think she's a very important, very great, on the Mount Rushmore of 80s pop for sure. And I think her influence is felt throughout music history, really.
Yes, I would agree with that. And yeah, I think she's one of the great all-time pop artists. Pretty different catalog than what we're used to doing, in a bit of a different genre. Yeah. It's not Elvis Costello. Todd Rundgren didn't produce any of these, and there's no slide guitar, and that's why Jason's not here. Yeah, anyone new to the channel, just a bit of a disclaimer. It is going to start off a little rough for my list, but swear to God, I really like Madonna, and it'll get happier and more positive as it goes on. Joe, do you want to kick us off with your number 14 favorite Madonna album?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. I got American Life at number 14. It's this weird mix of like auto-tune and folk music. I did not enjoy it in the least. I heard someone, or I read a review somewhere, it was like trap folk is what they described it as. And yeah, it just doesn't work. She tries to get like topical and deep, and you know, to the very varying success with the lyrics, but the music itself is just annoying. A lot of kind of that trap style, herky-jerky, auto-tuned lyrics. The vocals sound bad. The production doesn't sound good either. I just think, you know, she doesn't sound into it at all. She's kind of like talk singing a lot of the time, and it just doesn't work on any level. Nobody liked this album. Critics hated it. She sort of reset after this, went back to kind of the dance grooves, which she's much better at. So yeah, there's nothing on here that I would ever want to hear again. American Life, number 14.
Well, not everyone hated it. So my number 14 is, I think the main reason Jason didn't want to do this is for the 45 minutes of an album called Music, which I don't understand why this got all the acclaim it did. Again, not to beat a dead horse, because we always talk about how much we hate that mainstream, streamlined, late 90s, early 2000s production, and this is it in a big way. There's just this tendency at this time to do every single new thing that music programs and, you know, studio softwares have to offer, whether it's a bleep here, a bloop here, an unnecessary record scratch here. For this syllable, let's do this weird distorted effect on her voice just for this syllable and then never do it again. Let's make every snare drum just sound terrible and like it's from an iTunes program. It starts off as like this electronica dance pop album. You know, it really got away from like the singer-songwriter feel of Ray of Light before this. It's like ecstasy craving, heavy beats are being dropped. It's got like that early 2000s Euro techno rave. Every spy thriller movie you've seen where there's like a car chase through Prague has like this sound. And then all of a sudden it just kind of comes out of nowhere and kind of comes back down to earth, kind of so has the same sound, but is like almost like no longer a dance album on it. So that was a weird way the album kind of played out. Like once you get to the song I Deserve It, really comes back down to earth. Big hits off here, Music. I pretty much like all of her big hits except two of the hits off of here, Music, Never Liked, and Don't Tell Me. You know, that guitar riff on Don't Tell Me is kind of cool, but why didn't they just play it like that rather than just like edit it like that? It's so bizarre. I don't understand it. Pretty much everything about pop music of this time is illustrated on this album, and I dislike it. So this is, you know, the first few albums here is rough. It's a pretty big valley for me, all sub 2-star albums, and it starts off number 14, Music for me.
Well, that is interesting. That's much higher on my list. Did not expect that as your number 14, but let's get on with it. My number 13 is going to be Madam X from 2019. It's got a very heavy hip hop and sort of Middle Eastern, Latin rhythm influence. A lot of guest stars. None of them are any good. And it's just, I don't know, it feels like she's trying really hard to be with the times, but there's nothing catchy. There's nothing danceable. There's nothing fun. It's just not great. I don't even know who her producer is on this one, Mirwa or something. He doesn't, you know, it just, there's nothing here. She's kind of, I think she doesn't have a direction at this point. And she kind of was doing the dance disco thing, kind of started sounding like Lady Gaga, which is weird because Lady Gaga sounds like her, but then she kind of came back around and started aping Lady Gaga. And at this point, she's trying to like find something else to go to, but I don't think this is the way she should go. So just not a very good record. There's nothing on here I'd want to hear again. Yeah, nothing interesting about Madam X for me.
Disagree wholeheartedly, my friend. Madam X is in my top half of favorite Madonna albums.
Oh, wow.
But that one I can see as being the most divisive because it's probably her weirdest record. It's, you know, if you don't like, I can see it. But yeah, good shout on the Lady Gaga reference. I'm going to get to that a little later. Although I think she gets to that kind of, you know, playing off Lady Gaga albums before Madam X. And I love Lady Gaga as well. And I always considered her kind of like the new Madonna when, you know, I first heard Lady Gaga. But let's get to my number 13, which is MDNA. Also a pretty poor album, if you ask me. Sounds like everything else going on at the time kind of put into one. I agree with what you kind of said at the beginning, where she was kind of the innovator for a lot of the pop trends and stuff. But I think by this most recent decade, she was a bit of a follower. And I think it starts a little bit on Hard Candy, and then it really happens here. There are songs on here that sound just like Katy Perry, some that sound just like Lady Gaga, some parts of songs that sound like it could be Taylor Swift. It's kind of all over the place for me. And I don't really mind this era of pop music as much as I, you know, dislike 10 years ago from that from that point, like the early 2000s, but sounds really modern. It's got a lot of EDM on it. And the thing I don't like about this, and I always really love like her young charm, even when she got out of the 80s, when she was still doing it, this is the first one that starts to feel really kind of like wannabe status for me, kind of desperate. You know, the talent is there to put out a good, put together sounding record, but it just feels like she's really trying to feel topical and relevant, like LUV Madonna on Give Me Your Love. It's kind of really, it seems like, like a little bit of like the old soul in the young crowd, a little bit. I feel like she's kind of the mother character from Knocked Up, like going to the club now and just like can't get in and is still wearing the sequins hat and all that. Some Girls song like that seems just too like directly inauthentic and juvenile for, her at this time. She does a lot of lyrics where she's like shouting out to the DJ and, oh, I'm going to shake my ass. And I thought Superstar was a pretty good song. I think the rhythm is just a little basic, not the big hooks. It's just everything kind of has like those claps and big, thick, steady club beats. And I'm a Sinner and Don't Give a terrible songs. So this is like a 1.5 star from the MDNA.
I definitely don't disagree with all of that. But, I know it's more basic. We'll just say basic. But I think I prefer that to her sort of trying to find a new sound of something like Madam X. And to a lesser extent, my number 12, Rebel Heart. It seems like she's trying to get back to like Erotica, maybe a little bit. Something like Holy Water is very explicit and it kind of has a fun beat. It sounds like Beyonce, but it just feels like she's trying too hard. She's trying to like shock maybe a little bit, get back to the shock value. But it all kind of sounds like she's also trying to be Lady Gaga. The production is kind of just lame, very much to the time, but without some of that danciness that I prefer. I definitely like the dancey disco Europop late 2000s, early 2010s Madonna over this sort of electronica EDM aping Madonna. So I don't think any of these later albums are that great. So it just comes down to what's catchy or what's going to lodge in my brain. Nothing on here really does. So it's my number 12. There's not a lot to say about it. It's just, she's trying so hard to be hip now. I agree with you on what you said about MDNA. And I think it carries on into these next couple until Madam X, where she does kind of try and find her own sound, but I just don't like what she found on that one. So I give her no credit for trying something new on Madam X is what I'm trying to say. Rebel Heart, not great either. So my number 12.
Yeah, it's also my number 12, and it is still in that same category of trying too hard. Just look at the track listing. Like, just read the titles of these songs, like Illuminati, Unapologetic Bitch, I'm Madonna. It's just a little too much. Yeah, I think throughout her career, she's always got a good sound. She's always got like good control of what she wants her sound to be. This, it almost just sounds like she went to like her producers, which there are many on this, and just make it sound new. I don't care what it is. Just make it sound like all the other stuff going on right now. And like, that's all she really cared about. It's just got like this basic is the word. You're right. Like, it's big, basic, anthemic, melodramatic pop. It is fun. But like a song like Devil Pray, there's literally like lyrics where she's just listing drugs that kids are into, like acid, Molly, blah. And then she does that again on Illuminati, where she just lists every like brand and other artist that's popular. And she's selling out. She's trying to be hip. It's not the Madonna that we want. So number 12 is Rebel Heart for me.
My 11 is going to jump back in time all the way to 1994 for Bedtime Stories. So this came after Erotica. So she's trying to like dial it back a little bit, become a little more mainstream. People thought maybe it was like an apology for how far she went with Erotica. And I think the biggest problem with this one is just the production. It is so early 90s. It's New Jack just all over it. Every song kind of has that mysterious quality of the New Jack era with like synths sort of like trailing off. And it sounds like it just sounds so dated to me. I don't hate New Jack in general, but I just don't see Madonna doing it very well. And she doesn't. Really, the only song I like on here is Take a Bow, which is the one she wrote with Babyface. So that makes sense. I like Babyface. But everything else, you know, the production just kills it. It's all sort of mid-tempo, slow jams, sort of anonymous sounding. I guess if you really like that era of pop, R&B, you'd like this one better, but just, I don't know, nothing on here sounds original, or, you know, it definitely sounds like she's following the trend here, because this is 94, and I'm pretty sure New Jack was already well on its way to being out already. So it kind of just sounds out of place, a little dated. Songs aren't great. She doesn't sound that interested in the material. Yeah, number 11, Bedtime Stories for me.
All right, we're back on the same page. It's my number 11 too, and you knocked it out of the park. You know, I think I wasn't crazy about Erotica, and I think all of the steps she kind of needed to take to correct what I thought were mistakes on Erotica, she takes here. Like, she has the idea of what to take here, but she, you know, her footing's bad and she fails. Kind of just seems like you said, she was interested in that New Jack sound, and I love that sound, but by 94 here, yeah, it's what, like 8 years old at this time, maybe 6, 7 years old. And it seems like she just put together like all of these like generic samples and background tracks and just like was like, I'll just sing anything over this pretty much, really hoping that the vibes and the production just carry it. Just like no songwriting on it at all. I do like Take a Bow, Human Nature, but yeah, it doesn't sound like Madonna. This is the one that sounds least like Madonna to me in the entire catalog. It sounds like a lot of the songs like just sound like they could be like early TLC albums or something. Like, it's a song like Sanctuary has got like these weird Incense and Pure Moods vibes. It's just not it's way too soft. It's not poppy. It doesn't catch. But I don't think it has nearly as many like really bad moments as the albums that I was talking about before this. So that's why I've got it above a bunch of those albums. And those two songs I did mention, I think, are pretty good. You know, I kind of like the vibe a little bit of it, but yeah, as a whole, it doesn't work for me too much. So that is my number 11, Bedtime Stories.
My number 10 is going to be MDNA. And it's not that I really like it that much better than the other 4 before this. I guess I just have this one a little higher because it's a little more energy. She definitely, you know, this is the first one where she really sounds like Lady Gaga. Like, she really wants that style. Lady Gaga really wanted to do Madonna on Born This Way. So it's come full circle. Madonna is now chasing after Lady Gaga, and I think it works okay. I mean, that's a good person to sort of be following. And on this one, it's, you know, some decent energy. It's probably her most fun record in a while. She sounds a little more upbeat. She's kind of getting, even on her, you know, Confessions on the Dance Floor, it's very upbeat and energetic, but she sounds sort of like she's not having fun. She sounds like she's having fun on this. It's pure fluff. You know, there's nothing deep here. There's nothing, you know, she's not trying to save the Middle East or something, talk about George Bush and bombs and whatever. She's just having fun. It's derivative, but I think it's a decent listen. I didn't hate it. I wasn't bored. So I put it slightly higher. Still, you know, it's too much trap music. I don't love William Orbit or his production, but again, it's a fun record. She sounds like she's having fun. So I also had a little fun listening to it.
Number 10, I got Hard Candy. Yeah, kind of. This one was a hard album for me to place because I like a lot of the choices and a lot of the direction of it. Just kind of think it misses the mark, especially with the sound. With all of the collaboration and stuff on this, I feel like a lot of the quality of the sound is just simply not good and kind of second rate at times, which just shocks me because, you know, Timbaland's on it, Kanye, Justin Timberlake. They're like really good professional like album creators, and a lot of this just sounds kind of bad to me. Not a lot of really bad songs. It's just kind of meh, very forgettable for me. Heartbeat isn't a bad song, but a lot of it is just like not the style I want. Like with the song like Miles Away, I love when she does these great sweeping pop melodies and she's cute and she's coy, or like she's being really, you know, drastically sexual. Not when she's like trying to be really tight and stringent with her singing here. And that's kind of what I think. There's too much of that on this album. Maybe Incredibly, maybe it might be my favorite song on it, but nothing too memorable. I like Beat Goes On, you know, the one with Kanye on it. But yeah, this one, like the albums leading up to this, I like thought about, because I was like, yeah, these albums have a lot of problems. This one's kind of like just right in the middle, where not a too lot to complain, but you know, compared to the other stuff of Madonna's, you know, material, it just doesn't stack up. And I think this is number 10, right? After this, I pretty much recommend every album after this, including American Life. So my number 10 is Hard Candy.
It is my number 9, and I agree. It's, you know, for an album where either the Neptunes or Timbaland produce like every track, it kind of sounds like they're like throwaway B-side material. It's not up to their usual standard, I don't think. And Timberlake produces a bunch too. So yeah, it should have been better. It should have been more interesting. It sounds a little generic. It's that urban pop. She's not erotica level. She's a little smutty on here, which it doesn't sound like she's having that much fun. I think 4 minutes is pretty good. That's upbeat. You know, Timberlake and Timbaland and Madonna all getting together. That's cool, but it kind of sounds like stuff that's already happened like 5 years ago, maybe by this point. You know, something that Britney Spears had already done. So it's fine. It's just a little disappointing given the level of talent involved on it. You'd think it would be better. Not bad, not good, somewhere in the middle. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I think you can listen to all of these Madonna records without just like being like, ooh, what is she doing here? It's not embarrassing. Number 9, Hard Candy.
All right, my number 9, and this is where I'm calling every album decent or above, and it's going to get much above after this. I've got American Life. I didn't read any reviews on this. So I was, you know, uninfluenced by the common critique, and I got a lot of pleasure out of this one. I will say the lyrics on this are pretty bad, but I do feel like at least there's good material for songs here. A lot of the lyrics are bad, like I said, or just, you know, too much, just reaching, trying to be way too topical, and you know, the American religious and political thematics are over the top. She misses the mark. But, you know, I thought Ray of Light was a really cool step of her, because she went towards like singer-songwriter. I feel like she brings some of that back after, like, I didn't really feel like music had much of that. So I thought like the core of the songs was here, and just really enjoyable songs that the album would have been much better if it didn't have this stupid early 2000s production, like I just talked about. It's not a Darren Aronofsky movie where everything's got to go like this. And a lot of them just are watered down with this production and could be so much more. Like, I think Nothing Fails is good. Intervention. I think, you know, Love Profusion is good. I think Ecstatic Process is good. I Always Like to Die Another Day. I will say there are 2 absolutely terrible songs on here. I'm So Stupid, and the title lead-off track, American Life, which has one of the worst rap sections ever, where she's like, yes, I do yoga, no Pilates, or something like that. It's not good. But I thought, you know, everything else, the material was here and probably should have been better. So I'm going 2.5 stars, and it is my number 9.
Okay, well, we're getting to controversy on my list here. I got in number 8, Ray of Light. I hate the production on this. I hate that electronica sound, those ambient noises, the bleeps and bloops. It just sounds so dated and so bad to me. And I just don't think it's held up at all. I know everyone loved it when it came out and it was a big deal and she had reinvented herself. No, that's true. I'm sure it was very novel when it came out, but to me now it just doesn't sound good. I don't want to listen to it. I don't like any of the songs. I don't like any of the way it sounds. I don't like any of the production from William Orbit. I think it's just awful. And the songs just aren't interesting. They don't have any hooks. They don't have any choruses. There's nothing catchy about them. I think the songwriting is good. It's much better than Bedtime Stories. She sounds into it. She sounds really good. Her vocals sound great. And I think she's going for a lot of interesting concepts here. So it's not like a total disaster, but it's just the production really for me. I do not like this era of pop at all. I just don't like that sound, that sort of ambient, droney, electronic music. So I can definitely see why people really like this, but for me, it still falls kind of in the bottom where it's not something I want to listen to again. Sorry, I didn't see it on too many lists. I saw it on some of our commenters' lists for, I think, 2000 came out. I know, 98. So it did appear on some 98 lists. That's fine. Just, I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. I prefer the dancey, upbeat, big, bubbly synths. So, sorry. Ray of Light, number 8 for me.
I don't think you have to be too apologetic. You still got it in the middle of the pack. So, all right. My number 8 is Erotica, which I think is decent. I don't think it's nearly as good as what I was reading about it and how it's got this long-lasting legacy. And, every song on it I read is like a potential number 1 hit, and I don't see it that way at all. This one is like all vibe and production for me. I like the mood of the album. Leading up to here, she was, well, maybe even a little bit before Like a Prayer, she was always very flirtatious with her sexuality in the songs. Obviously, doing what she did on the dress at the Video Music Awards or whatever wasn't so downright flirty. But this one is really aggressive and seductive and sultry. And I think it really works. It's really provocative. It's a very interesting pop sense. The big problem I just have with it as pop music is a lot of the songs are just too long. A lot of them are like 5 to 7 minutes. I think it would be a really good service to the album to really condense that. But I think the sound is, I always think of like the book and her style and everything. This one is just like a big fashion album. The album matches like everything going on with Madonna and pop culture at this time. It's really chilly and like detached and sexual, and it's, I don't know if a lot of the songs, other than maybe like Deeper and Deeper, kind of stand out, but it's got like this guilty pleasure, like softcore porn kind of vibe like to the whole album. It's just so over the top, but nothing really, not too much stuff sounded like this before or at the time. So I thought it was a good listen from start to finish. I think a lot of the production sounds a little dated now, but still kind of works because I think a lot of her vocal performance matches what's going on, and you can really hear like this, just lush desire behind it, and it's pretty good. Not great, not that great, not very good, but it's good enough. So Erotica, in my more favorite Madonna albums, at number 8.
Moving on to 7, I got Confessions on a Dance Floor. Hung Up is the second song ever to sample an ABBA tune. So obviously I love that. Definitely puts you in a good mood for the album, which is, this came after American Life. So sort of another reinvention. No offense to you, Kramzer, but she realized that album sucked and she had to go in a different direction. So she goes 70s, 80s, disco, pop, which was a good move. I think it's very upbeat. It's very energetic, very danceable. Pretty much the entire album has high energy dance grooves. So it sounds good. I like the synth, especially on Future Lovers. Has a really cool synth line. I think it could be a little funner. The lyrics are pretty serious for how sort of energetic and fun the music is. It doesn't sound like she's having enough fun. Sort of, I don't know, a little morose on the vocals sometimes. I wish she would kind of get back a little bit more to that early mid 80s style where she's really kind of having fun, enjoying the music. It It's not quite peak Madonna sounding for me, but I like like the direction she went with. I think it sounds great. I think she sounds good. Her vocals, it's interesting. Her vocals aren't great in the 80s stuff. I think they actually get better as they move through her career, whether it's better singing or better production, auto-tune, who knows. But I think she sounds really good on this. Hung Up, Future Lovers are all pretty good songs. Forbidden Love, Jump, it's all good. So I think at this point for me, I start recommending Madonna albums. We're halfway through. This is a 3.5 stars for me for Confessions on a Dance Floor.
I mean, I've always liked her voice, but I've never really thought of her as like an amazing singer, performer, vocalist. But never really, to me, it's all style and pop hooks is like her strength, which is classic pop music. So my number 7 is going to be Ray of Light. I agree a little bit of what you were saying about how a lot of the production sounds dated, like that rave quality to it. That's a lot of what holds it back. But I think blended in with that is like this new rock. It's probably her most rock album, like singer-songwriter approach. There is some electric guitar in it. It's like Sheryl Crow is like at a techno club or something like that. I think it starts off with a lot of really good poise, focus on the lyrics. This is like probably one of her more personal albums. I think this is when she found Kabbalah, and a lot of the songs are about like spiritual awakening, seeing the path, all of that sort of stuff. I like Sky Fits Heaven. I think Frozen is good. Power of Goodbye. And there's a lot of really good tunes on here. Ray of Light is decent. I really like the lead off, Drowned World, Substitute for Love. But yeah, probably a little too much of that rave production, probably a little too much off the beaten path of pop music that she does that I really like. And then there is some duds on it, like Nothing Really Matters and Shanti Ashtanji, I think it's called. But yeah, I thought this was like a really cool approach for her to like really do something personal. The album would have been probably elevated if one of my more favorite Madonna songs from the Austin Powers soundtrack of this time, or Austin Powers sequel, Spy Who Shagged Me, Beautiful Stranger. I thought that was a cool song. Probably would have helped elevate this album a little bit for me and been one of the best songs on the album. But yeah, I thought this was a good move for her coming after Bedtime Stories and even kind of Erotica. It's changing it up a big deal. So I enjoyed this a decent bit. Number 7, Ray of Light.
My number 6 is going to be Erotica. It's an interesting work. Comes after Like a Prayer, which was religious and sort of upbeat and kind of big and grand. And this is really stripped down. It's cold. Madonna sounds really kind of aloof and detached, I think, from what she's singing about, which is supposedly, really sexy, but it sounds a little clinical to me. It's not like a turn on kind of sex talk. It's like from a textbook or something. And I know what she's going for. I like sort of what she's going for because I think it was really ahead of its time, very influential, even 10, 20 years down the road with its explicitness that somebody like Beyonce with her self-titled a couple of years ago, I don't think that record would ever have been made without something like this setting the tone. So I think it was super ahead of its time. It's got a hip hop flavor instead of the big pop that she'd been going for in all the 80s. So the production's a little dated. It's definitely got that early 90s sort of very ambient, cold sounding. But there's some cool stuff on it. I like the horns and the sax that come in. I think Bad Girl's pretty catchy. I think her vocals sound pretty good. So I don't know, it's tough to rank this one for me. It's like right in the middle. It's not something I really want to listen to again that much, but it's very interesting. So it's definitely something everyone should listen to, kind of see how ahead of the time I think it was. So it's a good album. It's not a great album. I don't know if it's quite as revolutionary as everyone thought it was at the time, looking back at it. But I think for the time, it was a pretty big deal and pretty big sort of step out of the comfort zone into something completely new. And she'd never really do anything like this again. So it's definitely worth a listen. It's good. It's interesting, if not quite. Those early 90s albums never really hold up, I think, as quite as good as some others. It's a weird time for music.
All right. Speaking of completely new, my number 6 is Madam X from last year. No, 2019. We're in 2021 now. Wow. I got no 3-star albums for Madonna. It goes from 2.5 from Ray of Light to 3.5, which means really good. So we're going from decent to really good. We're skipping good. I think this is a really good album. It is, like I said when Joe was talking about it, it's very divisive. This album and Erotica are her most unique albums, I'd say, in her catalog. Kind of the most daring. This one completely in a different way than Erotica. Yeah, the albums leading up to this, she was doing these big collaborative efforts, but I kind of feel like a lot of those were like really obvious mainstream ones. This one, she's like seeking out more unique stuff. They're not as obvious, and it's just a big, more like globalized, like fluid and unexplainable and unexpected just energy to this album. It's sleeker, darker, more mysterious. She's taking things like seriously, but also being really loose with it at the same time. The whole album can be really bizarre, very scenic from like song to song and moment to moment in the songs, but still like focused and totally unexpected. There's a couple songs on here that I think are just awesome, like God Control, Dark Ballet, really bold statements she's making about all kinds of stuff, love, religion, sex, politics, all of her usual big hits, but doing it in a style that she's never really done before. I thought this was just one of her coolest. It's cool. That's the best word for me to describe what I thought about it. That was a cool album, especially for Madonna. Like, I could, if I, didn't just heard this and didn't know who it was, Madonna would be one of the last people I would say is doing this album right now. I thought it was really cool. All of the songs I think are pretty good, not really anything that was terrible. And, it's very varietal too. There's like Joe said, there's so many different influences. There's Latin beats. There's just dark ballet is really awesome. I loved it. I really liked it. I thought it was, I don't want to use the love term too laissez-faire, but yeah, I thought it was really good. This and my number 5 upcoming are the two big pleasant surprises of doing this that I'd never heard before. I really only ever listened up through Ray of Light, but never listened to Bedtime Stories all the way through up until now. But yeah. So that is my number 6, Madam X.
All right, for number 5, this is where we differ the most, Kramzer. I got Music as my number 5. It kind of starts out in the same manner of Ray of Light. It's got that big electronica feel to it on Music. An impressive instant, I think, as well. And then it kind of takes a big left turn. I know you were describing Ray of Light as sort of singer-songwriter, but on this, it feels like she's really getting into that direction. There's more real instruments. There's some folk that comes through. I think it might be her most rocking album after the beginning, which when I was listening to the album, I was like, okay, this is going to suck. This is the same thing as Ray of Light, but even more annoying. And then it just kind of takes a big, hard, turn into something else. It's almost like country at some point. And I know she's wearing a cowboy hat on the cover, so I guess that should have clued me in. But I think it's very interesting. It surprised me at how many different styles she's going for. Don't Tell Me's good. What It Feels Like for a Girl are strong. The lyrics are good. The singing is good. So this one is definitely the most surprising. I thought I was going to hate this one, but I think she's trying for something new here. I think she goes too far on American Life into like trap folk, but here I think it kind of works with the electronica folk, trap, rock and roll, kind of bringing it in from all different directions, and pleasantly surprised by Music. It's still like 3.5 stars. It's not like very good, but I think it's a pretty good album.
I never understood the country comparisons on this. I don't think putting on a flannel shirt and a cowboy hat makes it. And doing stuff on acoustic guitar. I've never really understood that. But teach their own, whatever. All right, my number 5, an album that I really liked, is going to be Confessions on a Dance Floor. I agree. This was the perfect move at the perfect time for her. You know, it's just getting into really good, enjoyable, catchy, vibrant dance, synth, pop music. It's refreshingly simple, void of all the frantic, unnecessary studio choices. It's just straight up. You know, she's not reinventing the wheel here. She's not getting too creative. She's staying in the box of what she does and doing it well. It's fun. It's girly, channeling early, you know, cutesiness and fun of the first few Madonnas. It's got like that teenage soul on it again, without reaching like she would on some other albums, you know, just in the moment more, without being like so obviously trying to just cash in on youthful things. She just brings youthful energy, which is really nice. Hung Up is awesome. Whole album's got a nice throwback to 80s Madonna, 70s disco production. A lot of her like best choruses and hooks in a long time, I'd say, on this. Get Together is really good. Pretty much every song on it, I think, is pretty darn good. I Love New York is kind of dumb, but also kind of fun, just like a lot of low blows to other towns and cities, but it's cheesy. I think the bassy synth on it is great. Let It Will Be Cool is some really cool like symphonic string arrangements. And I think it's got a cool like, it ends on a really cool note with like this icy acoustic guitar part and like a big statement on Like It or Not, This Is Who I Am or whatever. So I thought this was a really, really good album. And probably because I was listening to it in order, her catalog in order, by the time I got to this, I was like, please just give me some of the fun, easy, just easily accessible pop music. And I got it right after American Life and Music. And I was like, finally. And I think, yeah, I don't remember hearing a lot about this when this came out, but yeah, it's really good, really good. 3.5 stars for me. Confessions on a Dance Floor.
All right, well, it looks like we have the same top 4, I believe, just in, I don't know what order it's going to be in, but that makes sense. I believe we're both big 80s Madonna fans. So my number 4 is going to be Like a Virgin, featuring Material Girl, Like a Virgin, Dress You Up. Some great songs on here. The singles are awesome. They're all fantastic. I love Dress You Up. I love that chunky metallic sounding guitar. It even has a rockin' guitar solo in the middle of it. Great track. Material Girl, really bouncy. And so, this track like that, I think she's being a little subversive with the lyrics. It's not quite as obvious as the lyrics, talking about only guys with cold hard cash can be Mr. Right, stuff like that. There's a little sarcasm and subversiveness, I think, on the top of that. Like a Virgin, she's getting into that sort of sexuality that she's going to explore on kind of all of her albums, really. But it's still a little lightweight. It's still fun. It's still peppy and poppy and synth heavy, danceable. I think the only thing that holds this back a little bit is there's a little filler, Shooby-Doo, Pretender, and Over. Probably my least favorite of her 80s tracks. She gets into balladry with Love Don't Live Here Anymore, and I think that's pretty strong. So it's good. It's lightweight. It's 38 minutes. It's just a fun listen. Great singles. So number 4, it's my second favorite Like a Blank album from Madonna in the 80s, but it's still good. Still a 4-star album, I'll say.
My number 4 is the debut self-titled Madonna. Yeah, I think that this pretty groundbreaking, so catchy, so upbeat, so much fun, really light, not heavy at all. The synth is thin. I like the sound. It's very synth driven. Some of the best, synth parts right off the bat with Borderline. It's innocent, sweet, heartfelt. The hits on this are like pop masterpieces to me. The non-hits are pretty good. I think the other albums in the top 4 kind of edge this out because the ones that aren't hits I think are better. So I kind of disagree with you there. Those songs that you mentioned from Like a Virgin I think are really good. But there's no doubting that, this puts her character right out front. Lucky Star is just banging. Holiday, I like Physical Attraction. It's just a really sweet, fun, easy listen, full of hooks, exactly what you want with pop music, kind of cashing in on the synth new wave. Not new wave, but synth music. So I think everything after this, she kind of gets more into her flirtatious sexuality period. This one is really just kind of like young girl at the mall almost. Very fun, looking at the big world ahead of her. And I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. The number 4, Madonna by Madonna.
My number 3 is going to be True Blue. You know, there's not a whole lot of difference between the first 3 albums. They're all kind of the same pop bangers, dancey, disco, post-disco, heavy synth, thumping bass, just so danceable. This one, she's bringing in a little more, there's 2 ballads really with La Isla Bonita and Live to Tell. Still have, the big pop hits, Papa Don't Preach, Open Your Heart. I like the sort of doo-wop throwbacks of True Blue and Gimme Gimme. And there's really not any bad songs on this one, so I like it a little bit better than Like a Virgin. I mean, it's a good album. There's not too much more to say about it. Nothing, I mean, she's not reinventing the wheel or the pop sound that she sort of started with her debut. So it's just another quality album. She wrote and produced, I believe, pretty much every track, which was not the case on Like a Virgin. So she's sort of taken the reins a little bit even more. So yeah, just a really good album. Lots of good pop songs. My 3rd favorite Madonna album of the 80s and of all time, True Blue.
Same here. Number 3, True Blue. Although I don't entirely agree that all 3 of them, I think the first one kind of stands out as being, just not plastic or superficial, but I think she really starts to dive into some more stuff, especially with, her themes and all of that. I think True Blue, right off the bat, Papa Don't Preach kind of gets into some, I think the lyrics are, not really, I was going to say they're kind of just contrived and a little too direct, but it is 80s pop music. So I take that back. It's fine. Open Your Heart is so damn good. I love the urgency and the chorus and all that. White Heat, really daunting and dangerous. So I think she's kind of taking each approach to each song a little, with a little bit more, creative focus, really trying to create a different dynamic in each song. There's some iciness on this album, obviously, with like La Isla, she's bringing in those Latin influences. A little bit of filler on True Blue. And I will say, compared to the first album, she definitely on the first album, she doesn't take a lot of risks as a singer. Like her vocals are pretty much all in just one nice little thin window. She's safe and sound there, and it works. Especially, like you said, on the ballad here, she really starts, widening her bubble of her vocal range, and I think it pays off. She never blows me away as a singer, but she never lets me down either. So a really good album, True Blue, my number 3.
My number 2, what's it going to be? It's going to be Madonna, the self-titled, the sparkling debut. Just so much fun. Right off the bat with Lucky Star, you can just tell this is going to be a fun album. Never lets up, borderline, super fun. I like the remix version on Immaculate Collection better, but quibbles aside, love that song. Just so catchy. The backup vocals are great. I think she sounds, for not having a great voice, I think she uses it really well. She always sounds like she's having fun, and her kind of attitude makes up for any shortcomings. She's not Whitney Houston, but you don't, it's not something that's noticeable where you're being like, oh, she shouldn't have done that, or she shouldn't have gone there. She uses it really well, and it works really well with the catchiness and the upbeat tempos. There's no ballads here. It's all propulsive rhythms. I think the non-hits are pretty good too. Burning Up sort of has a faux Prince kind of sound to it with some heavier guitars. Think of Me as well. So, this is 83, and I don't think anything else really sounded like this, especially not for a female artist. So she's really setting the tone. She didn't invent a style, but she really sort of trailblazed it for women, and it's just so catchy. I love this album, and I love all the songs on it. So I got nothing bad to say about Madonna. It's a 4, maybe even 4.5-star album for me. Great debut, just a classic of 1980s pop.
My number 2 is like I like the top 6 a lot. Really good. I'm into great territory here with my top 2 album of the year contenders when they came out. So 4 out of 5 for my number 2, which is Like a Prayer. Like a Prayer is my number 2. Sorry, we almost had a bifecta. Yeah, I like a Version just a little bit more. I think the main reason is this one is a little bit, and by comparing them, I'm not complaining about Like a Prayer, just it's a little bit more downtrodden and a little bit less serious, or a little bit more serious on Like a Prayer. You know, she's taking on that Catholic criticism and all that. And a couple of just personal things that kind of bother my enjoyment of this is I love Like a Prayer. I love the version on this album, but there's like some dance remix of it somewhere. And it's not even that much dancier. It's not like it turns it into just a club techno. There's a version where there's just like a little bit of remastering on it and it just sounds a little better. So every time I listen to it on this album, I'm just like a little bit let down that it's not that other version. But I mean, let's talk about how good it is. What a way to start off with the first 3 tracks. Prince on track 3, amazing. Promise to Try, I think, is one of her more underrated songs. It's like this really nice, emotional, almost sounds like Elton John with the strings at times. Love like the playful regal horns and, you know, like strings. Keep It Together is really bopping. I think I just have a little bit more fun on Like a Virgin, and I think I just kind of idealistically like her. Like, I think between Like a Virgin and Like a Prayer, it seems like she did so much growing up. And even though I love Like a Prayer, I really like just kind of like the sweet innocence. I think that's one of like if you were to take albums that really just like define a year or an era, to me, Like a Virgin is like early to mid 80s. It's going to the mall. It's materialistic. Well, let's talk about Like a Virgin later, but Like a Prayer is awesome. It sounds great. She's really starting to, you know, get her wingspan out with some of her creativity. And here, like that more aggressive sexual tone is coming in. Obviously, with Erotica, she'll really get into it a lot more. But yeah, all the songs are really good on here. Ends really well with Spanish Eyes and Act of Contrition. Really cool way to end it. So nothing much to complain about here. I think it's great. Number 2, Like a Prayer.
All right, well, my number 1 is obviously Like a Prayer. I think this is definitely her best crafted, most mature until, I don't know, maybe her later albums, maybe like Ray of Light. But as far as her 80s output goes, you know, her kind of struggle with Catholicism and sexuality and sort of the delicate balance between them. A lot of stuff deals with religion. She brings in sort of those religious elements, even to the sound of the album. There's a lot of big sounding strings and sort of big full production. It's not, you know, bubblegum pop. It's not the shock value. I think it's just really intricately crafted pop songs. Like a Prayer, you know, I love the juxtaposition between the sort of stately verse and the sort of like uplifting revival chorus. I think that's really smart and really sounds great. Love Song with Prince, you know, it sounds like a Prince song. You know what that sounds like. Cherish kind of gets back to her early 1983, 1984, Like a Virgin territory. It's a real kind of fun, upbeat love song. Dear Jessie is really interesting, sort of fantastical lyrics. Definitely nothing like she's ever done before or would ever do again. Reminds me of almost like Kate Bush territory. It's interesting. I think the whole album just has a bit more polish, a bit more Madonna knowing exactly what she wants to do and just sort of putting it all together. I really like this. It was very close in 1989 getting on my top 5 list. Just missed out. And I don't know, after listening to it now, maybe it could sneak in to that if we ever redo those lists. It's a great album. Express yourself like a prayer. cherish all great pop singles, and I think everything else is good too. There's no weak tracks on here for me. So number one, With a Bullet, Like a Prayer, 4.5 stars for me.
I feel like whatever your most recent enjoyment is, it's like, well, maybe this could compete for that year. For
It literally happens every time we do an artist and we get to the number one. It's like, I probably should have had this on the list. But it's interesting the difference between listening to an entire discography and listening to songs or albums just from one year. It really makes you think about them different.
Yeah, the context is so different. You appreciate the artist as a whole. Then you have that desire to be like, well, Madonna's really great. I've never gotten Madonna in on Albums of the Year. She really deserves to be talked about. It's tough. I see what you mean. But 89 was a loaded year. So was 84. So, Like a Prayer and Like a Virgin, I both considered. My number one is Like a Virgin. This to me is just brilliant, superficial, plastic, carefree pop music. It's gem after gem after gem. I think all of the stuff that's not on the radio is still really good, like Shooby Doo, Pretender, Stay at the End. I like all of that stuff. Material Girl, Angel, Like a Virgin, great trio to start it off. Love Don't Live Here Anymore is like a big step in vocal direction for her. She's really starting to get the pipes out more, and it also has a little more substance, even though it's quite melodramatic. It works for me. Dress You Up in My Love. Over and Over is like this really cheesy self-help song, but this is what you want in, 80s pop. I love 80s pop. This is one of the best 80s pop albums of the time, done by one of the greats. Although I think, like we talked about and made one of my lists, She's So Unusual by Cyndi Lauper is probably my favorite pop. Well, I mean, Purple Rain is a pop record, but one of my favorite pop albums of all time is She's So Unusual. But Like a Virgin is up there too. It's great. I'll go 4.5 out of 5, which means really great. I wouldn't say she has a 5-star masterpiece for me, just because even though I love pop music, an entire album for me of this style, of this substance of pop music, it's almost got to be like every song is 5 stars for me to really put it in that category. And, not always entirely in my wheelhouse, but I thought this was great. Obviously, looking at my list, it's almost cut in half for the 14, like 7 that I don't really recommend and 7 I do. But the 7 and especially towards the top, that's what, it's not like, I don't know, anyone new to the channel who's brought in just by, the Madonna clickbait. Like, if you really think that the bottom 7 Madonna albums are, on the same level or what she should also be known for, then that's great. But I don't think me or Joe or most of the world can really compare the two. What do you think, Joe?
I agree. I mean, I can definitely see not liking the majority even of Madonna albums. If you get into Madonna in 2016 or something, you've never heard any of her other stuff, I don't know how much you're really going to dig Madonna, but go back to the 80s, listen to her 80s stuff, start there, then work your way through. I think she's very good. She has some surprisingly good albums pretty much throughout her whole career. She's not just an 80s artist, but I think if you start with the 80s, get into it. If you like what you hear there, keep going. I think you'll find some surprises. Definitely, on that pantheon of 80s pop greats, trailblazer, very important in general in the music world. So she's a great artist. I mean, you don't have to like her, but you better respect her. Say that.
Yeah, I'd say it's safe to say that I like Madonna a lot. She's got 6 albums that I think are really good to great. And that's a lot of music to really enjoy. It's not always a percentage thing. Sometimes we've had this argument before. Sometimes people just make too many albums, but it's, the old burnout or fade away argument. I don't think she's in, fade away territory, especially because I like Madam X from 2019 a lot. I don't think that her next album will probably sound like that, but I will be interested to hear it. So thanks everybody for watching. Let us know what you think about your Madonna lists. You can rag Jason all you want for sitting this out, but you know, he probably would have really not liked a lot of these, to be honest. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Again, we're trying to put out tons of new content. Always stay tuned for Tuesday to start off our Artist of the Week. Songs on Wednesday, Side 3 Thursday, and Album of the Year on Friday. Check out our social media presence in the description, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And let us know what you think about Madonna in the comments. Don't pull any punches. Thanks for watching. On behalf of Joe and Kramzer, we will see you next time on Listography.